This lecture will cover Chapter 4 of the Communication Systems book, Design and Problem Solving. At first you may look at that and wonder, well, why would they put design and problem solving together? Initially we may consider those to be two completely separate things, but in fact they're actually quite related. And as we look at the definition of design, you will see that actually problem solving is at the root of what it is. And so to define design, we would say finding a solution to a problem using a systematic problem solving model. So the purpose of design is to develop the best message for the intended audience. But at its core, that design is problem solving, that there is a problem that needs to be solved, and therefore we use some kind of design to solve it. And that can be in a variety of different industries, scenarios. There's lots of places where there are problems that need to be solved, and it's a design that needs to come in order to solve it for them. And so whether it's mechanically something's not working correctly, we can come up with a design to develop the new system to make it work better. Or it may be in a CAD drawing, we have to figure out a way to make two parts fit together best, and so we have a problem to solve, and so we can use design to do that. But in anything, the purpose is to develop the best message for the intended audience, especially in the communication arena when it comes to solving problems. In many cases, somehow the problem that we're going to solve is going to need to be communicated, whether it's in a CAD drawing, whether it's in a poster, an advertisement. So the idea there is to develop the best design for the intended audience. So if we were coming up with an advertisement to try to reach 20-year-olds, that's going to be very different than the advertisement that we develop for a 60-year-old generation. So we want to make sure we consider our audience and then develop the best message for whatever it is we're trying to communicate. So we can use a problem-solving model to solve problems in our design. The model is a devised system. In the previous chapters we talked about the difference between a natural system and a devised system. So the problem-solving model is a man-made model developed in order to solve problems. And it's an important part of technology literacy. In our technological world today, that we have problems all around us. In most cases, the reason that you have a job is because there's a problem that needs to be solved. And so it's important to be able to solve problems. And if you are good at solving problems, you will be successful in your career. That's one of the top skills that executives, employers, HR representatives from companies, that's one of the top things that they're looking for in people today. And in some cases, it doesn't necessarily matter what your background is or what your training is. They're happy to train you in that area. If you can solve problems and be a good worker, they will hire you. So it is incredibly important in today's world, especially with technology. Technology in itself is inadvertently problematic, and that we always have problems with technology, but there are also always solutions, so we need people to be able to find those solutions. So one model that we can use here, you can see, is a 6-step model for solving a problem. And so we start with identify the problem and the specifications. This may seem obvious, but it is so critical that we have to be able to identify the problem. Think about if you have a problem in your car, something's not working right. You can spend an hour or 2 hours or all kinds of time maybe looking at the transmission and trying to figure out what's going on there, when actually the problem is somewhere up in the engine. Okay, and we've all been in scenarios where we're trying to fix something and we spent a ton of time and it's not working, and we finally realize, oh, that's not the problem's over here. So one of the first steps we've got to try to do is identify the problem. And what are the specifications? If we're coming up with a design, let's say we're coming up with an architectural plan for a house, what are the specifications? How big? What are the lot requirements? What limitations do we have in order to solve this problem? Step 2 deals with research the problem. We have access today to so much information. It's so important to research the problem because it's very possible and very likely in today's world that the problem's already been solved. Somebody has already come up with a perfect solution for the problem you're having, and you just need to find the answer. So instead of spending days of trying to solve it yourself, you could within 5 minutes find the answer to it just like that. Again, to come back to maybe a mechanical example, I mean, with the internet, we have we have such a huge amount of access to information that wasn't available 20 years ago. So if we're trying to fix something in our car, let's say we have an issue in our transmission, maybe there's an issue in our transfer case, that we can go online, search it, and find all kinds of information on telling us exactly what to do. Even being able to put in the make, the model, and it'll give us step-by-step instructions. That's at our fingertips within 5 minutes. Then we can jump over to YouTube and we can watch a video of somebody doing the exact same thing that we need to do. That kind of information wasn't available 20 years ago. Only, the mechanics, only people that had certain manuals had access to it. So we have such a huge advantage today with the internet of being able to research the problem. There's no reason to spend a bunch of time trying to solve something when it's already been solved and you just need to go research it out and find the answer. If, in the situation that the problem hasn't been solved or you can't find it, then you need to move forward with solving it. So step 3 is to generate ideas for solving the problem. This gets into a brainstorming step where we just start throwing out ideas. And we'll talk more about brainstorming here in a minute, but we're just trying to come up with ideas. At first they may not be necessarily good ones. We're just being open, we're throwing ideas out in order that we might solve the problem. Once we kind of exhaust that step and we've thrown out a bunch of ideas, we need to move forward. We need to choose a solution and move on it. So once we pick a step, then we're going to test that solution. We're going to see how it works, and then we're going to move to the last one to evaluate. Did it work or not work? If it didn't work, then we're kind of going back a few steps and starting over again. So that's kind of a step-by-step. Again, it's a systematic process that we go through. And, it doesn't mean that it has to happen slow. I mean, that it can just, happen really quick in our mind, but it's important not to skip steps. If we try to jump from, step 1 to step 4, we really limit ourselves and we may encounter some problems along the way. So it's important to follow through with each one of the steps. Another model that we have here, a little more basic, is just a 4-step model, or it's called the IDEA model. IDEA, I-D-E-A, being the acronym for identify the problem, deliberate on solutions, evaluate and choose a solution, and administer the solution. So very similar to what we just went through, but a little more basic and compressed. I mentioned we were going to talk about brainstorming, and just to highlight on that real quick, that brainstorming is a group technique for problem solving. In that step there where we're having to come up with ideas for a solution, we use brainstorming. And so there are some good rules and techniques to use when we do brainstorming. Again, the purpose is to generate ideas. When we're brainstorming, we want to avoid criticism. We're so quick to throw, let's say we're working in a group and we're throwing out ideas. We're so quick to be critical on somebody else's idea. No, that's not going to work. And you don't want to do that. That will really hinder the brainstorming process. So you want to really be open. Somebody may throw out something that's way out in left field. That's okay. Just move on. Again, you're not choosing that as a solution. We're just generating. And at the same time, we want to be creative. And this is why you don't necessarily want to just throw out ideas, because there have been so many circumstances where the solution was it didn't seem like that was right. Or the idea came up and it's just like, boy, that's way out there. But that actually is the best solution for the problem. So you want to be very creative. Creativity is another top 5 skill that employers are looking for, and part of that is just being able to solve problems. Sometimes you got to be creative. You got to think differently. You got to be able to come up with new ideas, new ways to do things in order to solve problems. And at some point, as you have a bunch of ideas on the table, maybe you can combine them. We can take pieces of this one and that one in order to come up with the best solution. And so that finishes the first part of our the chapter dealing with design and problem solving. The next chapter we'll get into is dealing with the elements of design.